Hi, I'm Adi, and today I'm going to teach you Eric Clapton's 3-chord trick. Now, if you're new to my channel and you haven't been here before, this is all about helping you to improve at guitar playing. So if that's what you're looking to do, please check out some of my other lessons, and of course hit that magic subscribe button. Now today we're going to look at this 3-chord trick. I've associated this with Eric Clapton just because he does it quite a lot, but so do lots of other players, so it's certainly very useful to have under the belt. And essentially what we're going to do is we're going to look at an alternative way to approach playing a D chord, a C chord and a G chord. So let's have a look at how we do that. Now we're going to start off with the D chord. Now normally if you was playing a D chord you play it like this. So we'd use 3 fingers, we'd use our first finger on the G string on the 2nd fret, we'd use our 3rd finger on the B string of the 3rd fret, and we'd use our 2nd finger on the E string of the 2nd fret. We'd mute the thickest E string at the top with our thumb, and we'd strum from the D string downwards, give us that lovely D major chord. For today, however, we're going to change it just very slightly, just by simply lifting up the middle finger. Now if we were to strum it and leave that E string that I've now made vacant at the bottom open, we get a D sus 2 chord. However, we're not going to do that. We're going to mute it off. So we're just going to use just a little bit of the thickness of the skin, either on the 3rd finger or on the 1st finger, or a combination of both, just to mute off that thin E string. And what we're left with is a D power chord, still strumming exactly the same way as you did with the normal D chord. Obviously this is a little bit easier and quicker to get to than the normal D major chord, but it also gives a slightly different tone, which is quite nice. Now that's the first chord. The second chord we're going to look at is a C add 9 chord. And to do this, what we're going to do is we're going to keep our position for the D chord at the moment. But what I'd like you to do is move your 2nd finger, which is already free, onto the A string on the 3rd fret. Okay, so all the way up here. It's going to mute the D string beneath it, and also mute the E string above it. So it's muting either side of the finger. We're also going to just lift up the 1st finger. Okay, and this leaves us with a C add 9 chord. A normal C add 9 chord, if you've learned before, would probably look like this, which is almost like a G chord just dropped down a string, which is a really bright and vibrant chord sound. But in this instance, we're not going to play the whole thing. We're going to come from that D, and we're just going to lift up the 1st finger and place down the 2nd finger up there on the A string 3rd fret. Now, one of the nice things we've got going on here, which is really useful to note for your songwriting and such, is we're allowed to keep this 3rd finger down between the chord change. And by rooting this on this particular note, we create something called a pedal tone, which is a note that we refer to consistently throughout a piece of music. And when we're applying it to strumming and chord changes like this, it just makes things sound smooth between the chord changes, which is really nice, and also adds that brightness of that note flowing through the melody. So very, very useful. So don't lift it off, keep it down throughout the chord change. Now that gives us our C add 9 chord. Our 3rd chord we're going to look at is a kind of G chord. What we're going to do is we're going to lift up our 2nd finger and replace it with our 1st finger, but a fret back on the 2nd fret there, still on the A string, and still muting the string above and below it. If it was to creep up and just leave that D string open, it's not the end of the world, but we're not aiming to do so. So we're going to keep it muted on either side, just like we did with the previous chord. And this gives you a kind of G chord. Now really we could think of this as a slash chord. It is a G chord over a B root. That's a B root note there, so it would be called a G over B. However, for simplicity, you might just like to think of this as basically a G major chord, because it's built from this shape. If you think of your normal G major chord, you hold down all those fingers, and we're just taking a couple of those notes out and muting them off. So it's still a G chord really. Slightly different to normal though, in that we're lifting off this little finger off the E string down there at the bottom. which would give it a bit of extra brightness, but we're not having that. We're keeping it like this so that we keep this D note going throughout the whole thing, which is there on the B string 3rd fret. So again, that's still humming throughout the whole chord change. So we have 3 chords there. We have a D chord, which is essentially a D5 chord, a D power chord. Then we go to a C add 9, and then we go to a G over B, which you might like to just think of as a G chord. Bear in mind, normally when you're strumming, you probably wouldn't even strum these top strings anyway. You probably go straight to the treble side of the chord itself anyhow. But anyway, yes, I'm going too far there. So we've got that D, C add 9, and then G over B, the 3 chord trick. Now, the cool thing about this is having that note ringing throughout the whole thing keeps it nice and simple, and equally there's not much finger movement. So if you're thinking you've got to sing through a song, much like Eric Clapton does, you don't have to worry about taking your hand off the guitar too much and having to look back and forth between your guitar and your microphone, all that kind of thing. So it's very useful for that kind of stuff. And just by comparison, if I had to take that song that I played in the intro to this video, which is White Room, but played it with the traditional chords, so a D, C and G, it'd be a lot more effort. It would sound very similar, but it'd be a bit more effort. So there was a bit more effort there, and it didn't quite have the same kind of rocky feel to it, I don't think, playing it in that manner. So it needs to be done the way Mr. Clapton would do so. So that lovely D chord, moving to a C add 9, moving to a G over B. Very useful kind of trick, which you can use for some other songs as well. I will stop that there. I hope that was useful to you. Have a little play around with it and try that with some other chords as well. See what you can come up with. It's a very cool trick, and once you find a few little favourite ways of manoeuvring between certain chords, they can become a staple part of your repertoire and playing. Please go ahead and check out some other guitar lessons if you enjoyed this one. Do make sure you hit that subscribe button, hit the like button, and feel free to comment below with any of your tips of your own. If you have any questions, I'll be happy to answer them. Otherwise, take care for now, and I shall see you soon. Thank you very much.